Buenos días de nuevo. Vamos a continuar con el...
Good morning again. We're going to continue with today's session and program. We're going to start with the presentation of the different assumptions and hypotheses of this project. We're going to start with Spain. As you know, the team is the University of Seville, Comisiones Obreras, and of course, Airbus. They are the three participants. So I'm going to give the floor to Milagros Martín López from the University of Seville and Project Coordinator. Good morning. Marta Bragano, representative of the European Commission, Mr. Felipe Rubio, Director of HR in Airbus, colleagues from the universities of Salento, Botham and Haddam University, Comisiones Obreras, Union of the Metal from Hungary and Poland and Germany. We are here at the end of a project that started 2 years ago and that concludes today with this conference, even though I don't have to thank you to the brief time I have for my presentation. But I would nevertheless like to start thanking you, to thank the European Commission, not only for the help, but the collaboration and response from Mrs. Pradanos to the demands that were presented. I would also like to thank Comisiones Obreras and metal unions from Hungary and Poland, to the university institutions, business school, Salento and Potsdam University, to the companies Airbus in Spain and Germany, the Salento Pole and the Center of European Development Center for Technology and Materials. I would like to thank not only the institutions, but to those that have actively participated in this research. The importance of the project, the attainment of the objectives have been thanks to the people. Beyond the knowledge, there is now a connection so that we are today with the satisfaction of the attainment of our objectives. I'd like to thank by Hungary, Professor Katalin Tandor and Bence Sambari and the members of the Metal Union. Italy, with the University of Salento, thank to Antonio Gioia, Tilio Pizziano, and Simona Pizzaleni. Without forgetting Germany, with Michael Newman from Halle University, and lastly, through Potsdam University, the collaboration of Agnieszka and Tomas. Lastly, let me stop a little bit longer in Spain. After the work, and as it was the case in previous occasions, we had the support by Carlos Aristu and Alfonso Vitan, General Secretary of Comisiones Obreras in Seville, and also we had the support from Felipe Rubio, Director of HR in Airbus, that is an international reference company with high-tech technological activity located in Seville that would allow our study. Thanks to Felipe, Alfonso, and Carlos. After the introduction, we also had incorporation of people from the three institutions I've mentioned, Carlos Sánchez and Alejandra Portillo, union representatives in Airbus, MYRIAM González and Manuel Rivera, and Elena Robles from Seville University, without forgetting Beatriz García and Alejandro Narváez from Airbus. Thank you all. This is not an individual project, but the result of the collaboration of all those that I have mentioned. After the I would like to start introducing the work. The progress in the process of digital transformation, it is of such magnitude and speed that at present is in the avant-garde of the discussions about competitiveness, economic growth, and the structure of the labor market in the European Union. Digital transformation that has been increased with the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. This digital transformation is having an impact on the skills of current occupations, but there are also new jobs being created related to digital skills, specific digital skills. This structural transformation of jobs does not only have a direct impact on the company level, but their impact also are present in labor relations in general and the economy and politics of different countries. Digital revolution, even though it can generate imbalances, for example, salary gaps between skilled and non-skilled workers, and also gender gaps or education gaps. And it also creates challenges that the company and the employees have to face. The main objective and methodology. The main objective of this project is to analyze in comparative terms and through the study of specific cases the effect of digitalization or lack on the economy in general and on companies in particular, as well as the importance of social dialogue and the role of social partners in improving workers' digital skills. The main methodology has been a survey that was the same for all countries. This survey was directed to 3 groups: the production staff, managers, and union delegates. The number was different according to the group. There were 10 research questions asked so that we have been able to develop a project, and they were related to the following topics: basic aspects of digitalization, training and digital change, collective bargaining and social dialogue, digitalization and quality of employment, digitalization and wages, digitalization and inequality, and illness and occupational risk related to digitalization.
The
study in Seville was carried out in Airbus before introducing the results of the research study. I like to say that the airspace industry represents one of the more dynamic industries at a world level related to an ongoing innovation and that contributes to the social and economic development of the countries where this industry has a place. This industry has a 3-dimension: civil, military, and space, and that depends on the different market demands. This is a tutored sector for the influence that it has, and is the state the main part that demands these products. In Spain, for example, we have Airbus, and Seville is one of the 10 cities in the world that concentrates resources and means to design, assembly, and test a full plane. Comisiones Obreras is one of the most representative unions in this industry. Population and sample. Airbus has 3 work centers in Seville, Tablada, and São Pablo. And São Pablo has north and south. In those factories, we have conducted the study. The company has 2,600 employees in Spain, and the distribution in Seville is as follows. In São Pablo, 1,780 employees, Tablada 826, with a sample of 126 surveys. Just describing the data of the sample in relation to personnel, we see the high percentage of men, 83.9%, compared to female, with ages between 31 and 50, and with the seniority in the company above 20 years. About union delegates, workers' representatives, is greater the presence of men. The percentage of men is 68.2% compared to women, 31.8%, with a seniority in the company between 8 and 15 years and an age range between 31 and 50 years of age. About the management, the percentage of men is close to 90%. The majority of the managers has a seniority between 15 and 20 years, and the age range between 41 and 50 years. So there isn't any woman with more seniority than 20 years or above 50 years of age. Now, the basic aspects of digitalization. We don't know about the future, but we can say the impact and the speed and the scope of new digitalization technologies in society, in the markets, and in people. When we started working in this project and we thought about the importance and the consequences of the digitalization in the labor market was going to have in the social dialogue, life and work of citizens, but we couldn't foresee that the COVID-19, we couldn't think about the role of the COVID-19. The pandemic has forced companies and workers and also institutions, public and private, to adopt action protocols that could meet in an initial stage to what was going to be the future. In this regard, we have to highlight, even though in a very brief way, the fact that our work is mainly guided to what we consider as digitalization compared to the automatization or robotization understood as the replacement by machines or robots. The digital transformation process in Airbus, this is not new. It was considered as very important already in 2016. The company had to face the main challenges of air transport, and due to two main elements. First, the growth of air traffic and the shorter life cycle of the aircrafts due to the current situation, and the pandemic has changed this starting point and has accelerated the transformation process. Really briefly, and in relation to our results, I will dwell on three important areas. The first is the transformations in the labor market as a consequence of digitalization. Secondly, digital skills and jobs. And the third, the digital gap. So the changes in the labor market as a consequence of digitalization, we can very clearly see in the surveys that there is a coincidence in the three groups when highlighting the transformation in the way of work and in the way of labor organization as a consequence of digitalization, especially in the areas of geographical mobility, time flexibility, and the decrease in the number of jobs. We also highlight mobility to higher positions. Nevertheless, and this is an important data, that technology progress do not mean that people are not important in the development of labor relations or the economy. Digitalization and its process can only be successful if it takes into account those that represent the company's human capital. Technology is just a tool that will allow the work of operators to be more productive, more agile, and innovative, but the work is carried out by people. This feeling of change, a disruptive change, or even a revolution, as some say, is a common understanding among the majority of workers in the productive economy, and the same can be said in Airbus. We see a coincidence of all participants in the survey that there will be a change in the labor market as a consequence of digitalization. What was just working assumptions, thinking about the future or with time horizon, now are short-term realities for the labor local markets.
En relación con los puestos de trabajo.
In relation to jobs and digital skills, is clear and undeniable that robotics, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things will change the labor market and the skills and qualifications to perform jobs. In fact, the three analyzed groups consider that in the next few years, digital skills will be more valued than any other type of training or education. In relation to the skills that are more valued now for the staff and trade union, they consider that knowledge, skills, and teamwork are the most important. For the management, they give priority to other subjects as knowledge or leadership skills and also language skills. But data radically change when they are asked about the future. What would be the most value skills in the future? The staff and union delegates highlighted a new skill, knowledge and data processing, and also in language skills. The response from the management is different. For them, the most valued skills will be the leadership skills and knowledge and capacity for teamwork. And lastly, I'm going to make a reference to the digital gap. Airbus, in the three groups, they expressed that digitalization could generate the digital gap or digital breach. Here we are not referring to the access gap because all have access and connectivity to internet. We are highlighting that there would be a use gap or quality of
no lleguen a adquirir las capacidades necesarias,
necessary capacities to use the new technologies or the necessary knowledge to use the network on internet properly and make the most out of it. So talking a little bit more about the digital gap, two questions have been asked to the three sample groups. The first question is on whether the digital gap will have a different impact per age segment. And the second question is if the digital gap will have a digital impact according to the level in the company hierarchy. As for the digital gap per age segment, a high percentage of the workers and this trade union delegates both coincide that the digital gap will affect differently according to the age, but not so much according to the managers. As for the digital gap having a different impact according to the position in the company, the percentage decreases in three groups, and the three of them agree in 70 to 70%. In the three groups, the result is that both the age and the level in the company position, both of them affect the digital gap. But according to the results, age is a key determining factor for the digital gap, but not so much the level in the company organization chart. So once the potential digital gap exists, it is necessary to invest in training in order to guarantee that the workers have the necessary digital skills to reduce this inequality. I would like to finish by saying that through social dialogue and collective bargaining, trade union action has a key and fundamental role to guarantee that the jobs are adapted and the workers are trained so that digitalization is an improvement for the company and is perceived by the workers as a necessary advancement with no further hurdles. And now I give the floor to my colleague Alejandro DÍAZ Moreno. Thank you very much for your attention and participation.
Bueno, de nuevo, buenos días.
Good morning. The study we have carried out in Seville, the Seville group in this consortium, where we have the company as the case study, Airbus, and the participation of Comisiones Obreras Trade Union, I would briefly like to talk about the consequences of digitalization, which are more having an impact on the workers' collective right, both on collective bargaining and issues related to trade union freedom and also fundamental rights of the workers. We have studied collective bargaining and the role that it should play in employment as a consequence of the changes brought about by digitalization and the increase of technology in the workplace. This complex process is based on the premise that is a process currently underway, meaning that even though that there are catalyst effects with fast changes affecting it, we are still facing a process of which we don't know the consequences and the final destination. The truth is that this transformation that we are seeing, we think that collective bargaining must have a key role because the training cannot be outsourced or cannot be done individually, but actually, in order for this to be good for all, it needs to be the result of consensus and dialogue and the participation of all the partners as a way to palliate the risk of social exclusion and segmentation. This is affecting the labor market structurally. So it does not only influence employment quantitative and qualitatively, but also it has an impact on the labor market structure as a group collectively. So everything that affects the employees, not only as individuals, but above all as a group. Therefore, the trade union activity must adapt to the new reality. The role of social dialogue should be constructive. It should be seen from a positive angle. Social dialogue is not a counterpart, a counterweight to digitalization, scientific progress, technological progress that we must embrace. Social dialogue must contribute to the transition being done as seamless as possible, especially for the workers, and should be seen as an opportunity as much as possible, and certainly not as something that we have to reject. So we have to promote adaptation, we have to promote adaptation of workers, we have to involve workers in the new revolution and the new way of seeing things. Workers should not be left behind. They should not be excluded without a reason. We need to understand the background. A fundamental part of social dialogue, rather an essential part, should be training and workers' acquisition of skills and competencies required for each job. So skills that are adapted to new needs and requirements must be an essential part and parcel of social dialogue. In that sense, it affects not only the companies, it's not just something for the company, but also it's a joint undertaking of social partners. The survey we did, I will not give you the details because you can see it later in the actual report, but all the partners involved in production in the company are aware of the fact that workers have to participate actively in the training, in the acquisition of skills and competencies. Of course, the employers as well, and in our case, more particularly, the company is sort of like a role model in the eyes of the people who answer the survey, but not just the company. But especially the workers, they need to have that intention of adapting to the circumstances and provide the necessary means to that end. Of course, public authorities must also be involved. They are also responsible, as we have seen today, universities, of course, which we also have to adapt their teaching and syllabus to give the future workers skills and competencies that are needed by the market. So let's not only think about productivity, which we should. Let's not only think about the companies having to adapt to be competitive, which we should, but let's also think globally so that none of the social partners are left behind or negatively affected by this revolution or big change that is imminent. So we need to strengthen digital skills, both general and specific digital skills, key for the future, so that we don't leave anyone behind. So we need to have adaptation, effort, work, and training. And this has to happen by everyone. It has to affect everyone. Cooperation, collaboration are key. Having trade unions, employers, and educational institutions. Key collaboration so that the scientific advancement does not, or the scientific revolution does not leave any casualties behind. So training should not be exclusively received by a few. The public sector has a key responsibility, both directly, they have to facilitate the training mechanisms that are needed, but also indirectly, because they need to help, support, and back up so that employers can adapt the profile of the workers, and so that the workers can adapt to the new jobs or the future jobs that may come up as a consequence of the revolution. So together with training, and I shall not dwell on it any further, so together with training, the adaptation to new skills to carry out a new job efficiently and with personal fulfillment and professional solvency, to achieve this, the digitalization will affect structurally labor relations, more specifically on collective bargaining. Collective agreements now, the new ones, or well, the new ones for sure, but the past collective agreements did not include any mention to the digitalization consequences, this fast digitalization. But now there are new terms and conditions in the collective agreements talking about training, as I have just mentioned, but not just training, but also health issues, problems related to remote work, working from home. So collective agreements already deal with problems derived from our current remote work and digitalization practice that we see in our companies. Transformation needs a cultural change, not just for collective and employment rights, but also a cultural change in many fields. Without the training, that change will be more abrupt So we could talk about disruption, actually. I would rather talk about adaptation or modification. It's a smoother word, and it includes people in it. So, of course, basic labor law institutions will be affected, and we have all studied in our universities. They will change. So the contracts will change because there will be new types of formulas that are even aware, sort of like apart from labor law or labor rights. The faculties of business organization, I don't know, I don't really know but how, but they will have to change the content of the syllabus, of course. I mean, no, I don't know if they're going to change for the better or for the worse, but the universities of business administration will have to change radically, and labor relations will have to be taught in a different manner. Access to social benefits will also have to change. So these are all problems that we will see very soon. And of course, the instruments for collective representation and bargaining. Trade unions know that we are in a situation that we will have to adapt to. And the tools for trade union representation will have to certainly be modified and adapted to the new reality. I mean, there is no doubt about that. And of course, Airbus, they're already probably discussing their collective agreement, and they are dealing with these matters. Trade union activity, both for social dialogue and collective bargaining, has to be adapted. It's unavoidable. And it is likely that trade union activity will have to extend its scope of work to subjects that go beyond the former employee profiles. I mean, collective bargaining in scope in the past, and we have now an added difficulty because the greater independence of workers, and it is very likely that they will also have to cover, to a certain extent, those workers that will be without collective protection. And that is one of the big challenges for trade unions nowadays, the new workers. Companies will tend to change in the labor contracts. They would be sort of like ad hoc labor contracts. They would have very customized labor contracts for employees, and companies will make sure that the collective bargaining procedures and representation procedures, I mean, that's what the law says, and they have to. So trade unions must be represented, but trade unions with themselves, they will have to articulate the new way of representing their workers, and that will be sort of like a huge task for them to try and reach all workers efficiently. Under the future foreseeable situation, this task will require a lot of work by the trade unions because, I mean, the employer will simply just, they will never say no to social dialogue, but they will have a partner that they have to talk with. And the other way around, there will be many workers in the future who don't even know who their employer is. They will work for many employers or many types, which will generate this a bit of anarchy in the sense, not politically, but in the sense of the labor structure. So being away from the norm and the standards as we know them today, so we would have to have the intervention of the public authorities. We will need new legislations, new rules. And we don't know. So new legislation is needed. We will need to modify certain fields of labor law. And we will have to have a more forward-looking approach, always making sure that all transformations are aimed at improving a better quality of life, better social peace. We're not doing very well for time, so I would simply like to repeat that markets will work on this direction, and we have social dialogue, and they will have to regulate those dark areas that are more difficult. It is true that there will be more flexibility in work, and from that point of view, they can have a better work balance, work-life balance that would be more positive, but we would have a more individualization of the work and polarization of the work, because we will have employees with a stable job and other employees that are more seasonable and per projects. And these type of circumstances are what we are going to find: fragmentation, individualization, etc. At the end of the day, what we have seen in this study is that we can expect a central transformation in labor law, maybe historical changes. I'm not sure we should use the word historical, because maybe that's sort of something bigger, but in any case, it's a change, it's a complex change, and we don't know where this will end up. But it's much better to adapt and to think about the problems that we will have in the future with anticipation and proactively. And the trade unions have to do that together with the companies and the public authorities. They can't be reactive, they can't be passive, they can wait and see what happens, but rather they need to anticipate and try and find a solution to certain situations that are not desirable for any of us, and socially they are not wanted. Thank you very much to Airbus. Thank you, Comisiones Obreras Trade Union, for your support. Without you, we would have never done it properly. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Alejandro.
Thank you, Alejandro. And now we give the floor to Manuel Rivera Fernández from the University of Seville and member of our team. Good morning to all the participants here in the room, to my colleagues and partners from the project from Italy, Hungary, Poland, Germany. Hello to my colleagues from the trade union, Comisiones Obreras, the company Airbus. As we have said today, new technologies are a key factor to improve competitiveness, productivity, economic growth, and employment growth. And they are key because they affect all economic sectors, and they have a greater and greater influence on working conditions, as it has been said by the predecessors in the seminar. The new digital framework raises many questions: the risk of margination, segregation, and in some cases, the exclusion of those who cannot adapt to the technological change. The appearance or the creation of new borders or frontiers between the two ways of working, meaning employees and self-employed, and the establishment of a new way of work in the human resources field. In all these fields, digitalization plays a key role, and we need to review the traditional concept demanding a dynamic labor law, which is sufficiently flexible and adaptive to the new changes. A labor law that allows the company planning and defending productivity, and at the same time protects workers, as it has traditionally done. Our rules and legal system need to allow the integration of new technology to increase productivity, but the implementation of new technologies need to have hand in hand the responsibility of the employer, respect for the workforce, And we need to go for the technologically responsible company. A new legal framework, which in the Spanish case is happening at huge steps with new regulations such as Royal Decree 2020-20, which has established a new legal standards for remote work in Spain. Organic law from the 5th of December 2018 on protection of personal data and guarantee of digital laws. So there's no doubt that digitalization sets new questions in the field of labor relations, starting with the link we have with the company. In our study, the Airbus, in all cases, they talk about maintaining employees instead of self-employees, meaning that it will not affect the way of working. But the study has said that there will be changes in the type of contract. So indefinite contracts will be abolished. And I think they're right, because the new ways of a collaborative and economy or access economy will have very little repercussion in the aerospace industry where Airbus is. But we cannot say the same thing for the new on-demand economies, whose main feature is to have many people, service providers who are ready and willing to provide a service, and a wide range of potential clients such as Airbus who can request that job. The appearance of the digital white collars can question the traditional salaried work interaction or model of contract as it used to be done in Airbus. Are these new workers self-employed, so-called 4.5 or 5.5? Are these self-employed workers those who will be able to be introduced in the aerospace industry? Workers who keep their freedom, self-employed workers who use technology to diversify their client base, to put an end to their unemployment and to improve their income, being always subject to the contracts of the on-demand economy. So in that possibility, part-time work will become very important because there is fragmentation of tasks as a consequence of the new technological revolution. Part-time work, which in our country needs to be simplified for the legal basis. A new legal framework that is easy to understand, that is usable for employers who want to hire people under a flexible regime, and also who are attractive for a worker who have other needs, such as training and work-life balance. In our study, Airbus employees are aware of the fact that the contract type will be changed by their digitalization, and they think that part-time contracts will be more prevalent, especially temporary contracts. But be aware, there is a risk that if we have shorter and shorter contracts, the company may not be responsible for the training of the employees, but actually the company will ask the workers to be updated, pay for their updates, and devote time to their updates on their own basis. Digitalization and working hours. Well, the incidence of new technologies designs a model of labor relations in which it's more and more difficult to specify when the working day starts and ends. The world of labor and the digitalization is fully into trying to find flexibility policies in the working hours. I mean, this situation has been called I mean, this situation will allow the worker to combine work with other personal and family activities. And at the same time, new technologies, this fast digitalization may also create new duties and new servitude in salaried work. Technology blurs the line between work and rest to the extent that we can be perpetually connected to work. In our study, digitalization, according to the Airbus worker, will not create any alteration in the working hours. They think they will not change the number of hours, and they think that they will work more hours, or sorry, less hours, but they think that the working hours will become more flexible, and also their shift will be more flexible. This is something that has been discussed in Spain. I mean, in Spain, many people have demanded and claimed the fact that Spain should have the same working hours as in Europe. But everybody knows that using digital devices at work make us being available all the time to our employer. So in this framework, the risk is to be permanently connected and therefore permanently working. So it is necessary to have an effective regulation of the right to the digital switch off. In Spain, pursuant to organic law from December 2018 on the protection of personal data and guarantee of digital rights, they have introduced the right to digital switch off.
The entrepreneur, therefore, has the duty to protect workers' rights, and it should respect the right to rest. We need to control the limits of working hours, and therefore, in our legal order, together with this right, the Spanish legislator has set the obligation to register the entry that should include the specific time of beginning and end of the workers without damaging time flexibility. There will be more measures. The law on digital disconnection, the law on time register would be a guarantee of the right to rest, and they are measures that will control the time, the working hours in this new time of digital time that we are witnessing, and directly within the impact of digitalization in labor relations. To be present at the workplace is also important. The pandemic during 2020, 2021 has promoted a specific way of work. We can also see teleworking, remote work, but by magic, there is on-site work has become teleworking or remote working, and this is here to stay. Teleworking, that means one of the areas that is more visible now in relation to digitalization. And even though all on-site works cannot be transformed into remote work, but there are some ways of online working that will be transferred to the majority of service provision, and merging on-site work with remote work. In Airbus, they consider that to be present is important to develop their role in the company, and even the management consider very important to be on-site at the workplace. The special or specific activity of Airbus make us believe that the majority of the activities required to be on-site, but there are other essential functions in the company. For example, project design may not require to be on-site. If this is the case, and it might very well be the case, we should take into account the implementation of the Royal Decree of the 23rd of September 2020 of the deployment of remote work in Spain, and a new regulation that could be applied to all teleworking, at least for 30% of the time, with a reference period of 3 months. That presents many different questions. There is the specific right of employees, so that all the equipment and expenses related to the tools needed to develop their work, everything that is related to the new contracts with specific information, the possibility of terminating, the denial of the worker to do remote work that cannot have any impact on the worker relation with the company, for the potential cancellation or termination of the contract. Or another problem that could be a consequence of this royal decree, especially for Airbus, which is the legal competence in the conflicts between the workers and the company. We're talking about professionals located in a specific country of the European Union, and the company may have its headquarters in another country. And this is another pending subject by the courts or the royal decree itself. So in all those problems related to digitalization and labor relations, the Airbus representatives understand, and in relation to the agreement, the collective agreement, that is the protecting element. But we should know that digitalization promotes individualism, as we have said here before, because of the disappearance of the on-site workplace. And this undoubtedly will have an impact, as the Dean Professor Alejandro Díaz Moreno said, it will have a strong impact in collective bargaining. Also, all blues speak about the proliferation of self-employees. Maybe we can rethink collective bargaining to all those workers, whether wage workers or self-employees that are subject to a counterparty, harmonizing their working conditions regardless of the way they provide their work, in order to eliminate the border between those type of work. This possibility will allow to avoid unfair competition between those that produce using digital platforms and the flexibility of self-employees compared to those of a traditional company. And this is wage and salary, another of the elements of labor relations that will probably suffer the impact of digitalization. Digitalization of industry, but also of SMEs and self-employees, and digital training are key factors to reactivate the economy and generate jobs in Spain after the huge crisis of this pandemic. And in this field, it is clear that all industrial sectors require new professional profiles, for in the area of marketing or digital analytics. In our country, the multiplication in 2.4 this situation. The post-COVID employee that can adapt to new technological change with the necessary skills to go along digital transformation in a globalized and volatile environment. And these professionals will be needed and contracted. And therefore, digitalization, having digital skills will generate, and this is also the opinion of Airbus, it will generate a transfer of workers among the companies themselves. It will have an impact on the salaries, obviously. We shouldn't ignore this need for those companies that need an immediate adaptation to economic change, and wage or salary flexibility will be a determining element. It shouldn't surprise us that at a short or mid-term to see the implementation of a wage system or the attempt to do so where salaries are related to the results, so that there is a relation between the situation of the company and the workers' salaries, and also the implementation of the employees in the success or failure of the company. The main problem, or one of the main problems of digitalization, as it has already been said by Professor Milagro Martín, whether we have or not a digital gap, Airbus workers think that the problem would be in the use of their activity in relation to digital skills. We are not thinking about the access gap, of course. In Airbus, for example, Airbus provides connectivity, but I would like to mention 3 areas in relation to the possibility of a labor gap or a digital gap. First, the importance in our to training in this new technology environment, and we can see it in the law 30 of the 9th of September, where the training system is regulated, that consecrates as one of the objectives to get the workers close to technology. So it's in our legal system. On the other hand, the law, as is present at the Luxembourg court, the right of workers to be trained at the workplace, including, of course, the adaptation to the modifications of their jobs that are related to the digital transformation, and also the consequence of the lack of adaptation of workers to those digital skills. Workers' statute itself might make viable the termination of the work if the employee does not have technological skills. So this is just a number of different reference points where digitalization has an impact on labor relations, and we have seen it in our study, and I've just limited myself to briefly describe them, but they have been widely analyzed and developed in our study that will be available to all of you. And without further ado, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Manolo. And now we're going to give the floor to Miriam González Limón from Seville University, also a member of the Seville team. Good morning to all the participants in the project, University of Salento of Hungary, Poland, and University of Halle in Germany, I would also like to thank Airbus, the union representatives, trade unions, and all the on-site participants, and also those that are participating in streaming. I'm going to speak about two items that we have developed in our project related to the research questions about digitalization and women and digitalization and labor health. And just as a bit of a background, we have to speak about 2030 Sustainable Development Objectives that speaks about gender equality. Also in the digital agenda for Europe, it states the increase of women in the workforce. We should say that the fourth industrial revolution, as a consequence of the digitalization, is considering different work typologies, even rise to different impact on workers. As a consequence of this disruptive change, we should tackle gender gap. In the labor market, there are mismatches between offer and supply of jobs, and this happens especially in the contracting of experts in ICT's experts. But there are jobs that are not covered. There are many companies having difficulties to fill specialized positions in digitalization and ICTs, and therefore there's a demand for new jobs, for new positions, but sometimes they are vacant. The fourth industrial revolution can contribute, therefore, to gender equality. And I will give you now some general figures. Women are underrepresented at all digital sector levels in Europe. Only 21.5% of people conducting digital jobs. The number of specialists in ICTs in the total employment of the active Spanish population represents 3.2%, and the European average is 3.9%. And this gap is being filled in the last few years. The number of graduates in ICTs in Spain is still very low, even though it has increased. It's only 4% of the total graduates. Only 30% of those that access for the first time to universities, that is in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and maths, are women. And this is related to what the Deputy Don Rogelio Velasco has said here. He didn't refer to gender, but those are the jobs that will be demanded in the future are of engineering. You see that the rate of women specialists in ICT is only 1.1 of the total female employment. And we should say, therefore, that women are underrepresented in all scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematical jobs. Those STEM fields that are usually related to higher salaries and are more resilient employment to economic cycles. And therefore, the gap between men and women are in other fields like business science, administration, and law. We can see that the impact on job cuts due to technology will have a direct impact on the areas of work that are usually of women. In this field, the situation of women is far from getting equality in technology education. The number of women that access engineering careers is being decreased. We see that the jobs of the future will be more focused on these areas. So we can say that there will be a greater gap, therefore. And now the empirical part of the project about digitalization and women. In the project, as has been said, there was a survey to our Spanish partner, Airbus, with questions, and I will now present the results. Whether digitalization will equally affect men and women, 100% of the managers think that there will not be a difference. This percentage is reduced when asked to the staff, 82.8%, and 61.9% when the question is to union delegates. So 100% of managers think that there will not be a difference. On the other hand, another question, another research question on digitalization in women is whether digitalization will generate salary differences between men and women. You can see the negative responses in the chart, and the managers think that 78.2% is thinking that there will not be a difference. The staff is along the same lines with 87.5%, but the union delegates, the responses is 33.3%. 1 out of 3 union delegates answered no. Another question to Airbus is whether they know measures to improve women digital skills. Managers, 6.3% are the affirmative responses. So all the groups answered below 25%, stating that they do not really know measures to improve their skills. That's how they feel. So they are negative responses. We also asked 2 open questions. What were the specific measures in the company to make work more flexible and to help work and life balance? Managers said speak about flexibility given to the employees for work and life balance, but sometimes it was not good for promotion. Flexibility in the physical presence supported by digital tools like smartphones and email, time flexibility, teleworking, and inside kindergarten. So they highlight the teleworking and time flexibility. When this question is addressed to the staff, they stated that teleworking and working hours flexibility to adapt working hours to make them flexible, they coincide, both groups. Union delegates also stated equality plans, teleworking, kindergartens, and flexible working hours. So time flexibility and teleworking seem to be the common response in the 3 groups. The second open question about this is, what are the proposals to promote the access of women to management positions? Managers, women networking, web forums, women-men ratios that are also introduced by the staff, as you can see. Balance for business, women network, and mentoring. But union delegates speak more about management plans, equality plans, about the minimum quota. So those are the main conclusions in the first part in relation to the project's results. About the second part, digitalization and work in health. Digitalization of work is faster than the research studies, and we don't really have many results on the impact on health, and the regulation is also behind. We are lagging behind the potential illnesses. Digitalization is generating positive and negative impact, and we can see emerging risk on the workers' health. So we should maximize the benefits of those new technologies, but also guaranteeing the health and safety of the workers, so that we can speak about a sustainable development. Digitalization in itself is not good or bad, it's neutral. It depends on its rational use and the impact it will have on health will be either positive or negative. Here we have one of the questions to Airbus, whether they believe that digitalization will change the social protection system of the workers. The staff and the managers, they answered that it will not have an impact. The answer is close to 50%, 47.2% the staff and the management 50%. Union delegates, on the other hand, a high percentage stated or didn't answer on whether there will be a change in the protection system, in the social protection system. There was also an open question on the social protection aspects that will be modified by digitalization. Management answered that there would be new protection systems. The social protection will be adapted to new hazards or illnesses, and we should promote telediagnosis. The staff also answered about the increase in the number of professional illnesses and also a greater distance and less contact. This might be damaging because the work will no longer be in situ or physical. There will be a different concept of what a working day is that will be more difficult for collective bargaining to be implemented with an increase in dispersion. Union delegates answered that what needs to be regulated is the salary of remote work or working. Another question about digitalization and labor health was whether they believe that digitalization will give rise to new professional illnesses or hazards. The three groups are at levels above 70%, staff 71.3%, union delegates 77.3%, and the management 75%. So the three groups along the same lines. What are the type of illnesses or professional hazards will be impacted by digitalization? We can speak about digital addictions, digital stress due to the intensive use of technology, ergonomic illnesses, stress due to connectivity, isolation, anxiety, and also sight problems. The staff also mentioned sight problems, problems of digital disconnection, stress, the isolation of workers that may give rise to mental problems and addictions to technology. And the union delegates have just highlighted the most important ones: stress, techno-stress, and the no disconnection problems, and the need to socialize is not offered by digital works. And those have been the main results of the two questions in relation to our study and Airbus. Thank you very much for your attention. Good afternoon. I'm going to be really brief. Today, Alfonso Vidal, General Secretary, will make a longer presentation of our participation in the project, so I will just introduce the two colleagues that have participated in representation of the union in the work throughout the project, but I would also like to make two comments. First, I would like to thank and greet our colleagues that are seeing us through streaming, and we couldn't share with them this last part of the project, but we were lucky to share the previous stages, some of them on site, and I'm sure there will be more chances in the future to be together, and I would like to congratulate them for their work that has been very gratifying to have a comparative to see how other European Union countries, and I'd like to thank the European Commission for this project, and to see how in other countries, with the collaboration of other universities or other companies in other industries and with different unions, to see how they are adapting to the changes by the digitalization in the labor world. I would also like to thank those that are already our friends, the research team of Seville University led by Milagros, Alejandro, the dean. They are friends, and this is the second time that we collaborate in a research project, and labor relations are very important, and personal relations are also important. So not only their scientific excellence, but also their work. And when we speak about adapting to change, this project had to adapt to changes due to the pandemic. And we see the capacity
of the scientific world to adapt, as in the case of the University of Seville. Just two small details or just pieces of information. Why is this project so important for Comisiones Obreras and Airbus? Airbus, as the regional minister and the Lord Mayor said, they are a flagship company for Seville. They are the tractor company in an industry which for decades have generated high-quality jobs and adapted to many changes in a very dynamic and competitive sector, such as the aerospace sector, contributing to the city with a redistribution of the wealth thanks to high-quality jobs. Therefore, for us as a trade union, participating in dialogue and collective bargaining when facing the necessary adaptation to a new phenomenon, which is neutral, but generates a lot of questions and risks, as you have explained earlier on, and which generates risk for certain groups which are more vulnerable to these changes. In this line, Airbus has a culture. Of course, there are conflicts. There is no company without conflicts. But the experience we have had in time, both for the employer and the trade unions, has been of dialogue. I mean, there are peaks of conflict, but there is a conflict resolution culture, and conflicts over time have been resolved with dialogue. Collective agreements are our main tool to adapt to changes and to share and balance the consequences of changes, to have a balanced distribution of sacrifice and profit. Airbus has always been a flagship company and will continue to be so. I must also say that collective bargaining in a company of this kind, with sectorial collective agreements, with the obligation and challenge of offering also guidelines to SMEs of other sectors that have more problems to adapt to the digitalization needs. Our challenge is to offer solutions, to resolve contradictions, so that we continue being the main sector of Spain for one reason, because workers think that we are useful. in the specific matters of their individual punctual problem, but also because we can find dialogue to solutions based on collective bargaining and social dialogue, as Alejandro said. I would like to give the floor to my first colleague. We have a couple of stars in this project. They are like a duet, and they have been very complementary to each other. They represent the two factories that Airbus has in the city of Seville, Tablada and San Pablo factories. They represent over 2,500 direct jobs, plus indirect employment generated by Airbus. So they're also a trade union reference for subcontractors. Carlo and Alejandra, they are man and woman trade union delegates of both factories, and they come from both the shop floor and engineering. We are a trade union that represents the whole set of workers. So in this sense, the team the Comisiones Obreras has brought is certainly up to scratch of the scientific and production level of the company. Without any further ado, I give the floor to Alejandra, our first colleague, comrade. Good morning to those of you who are present here today, those of you who are watching us via streaming. All my love for my colleagues from Hungary, Italy, Germany, and Poland. We missed the in-person meetings, but from here we send you all our love. We are happy to see that you are well, that you are safe during this pandemic. Thank you, international colleagues. Thank you to the University of Seville, MILAGRO and Alejandro, for your support in this project. I want to thank my trade union for having chosen me to participate in this high-level project, which is always a reason of growth at the professional and personal level. Our presentation will talk to you about setting the framework of Industry 4.0. Our company is an aerospace company, and digitalization is seen within this industrial revolution. Then I will talk about the company's vision and the importance of digitalization and the impact for the workforce in the next few years. We will also talk about trade union representation in the company, defending from Europe to the Seville factories. I will also like to talk about the collective agreement as it has been mentioned in other topics. And lastly, my colleague Carlos will talk about the challenges we face in this environment, being very close to our members and also to the bargaining with the company. Industry 4.0 is undergoing the fourth industrial revolution. Just to give you a framework of where we are. The first industrial revolution took place with the steam engine. The second industrial revolution, electrical energy started and mass manufacturing. The third industrial revolution integrated electronics, computers, and automation and robots. But since 2010, we feel worldwide that we are undergoing the fourth industrial revolution. At least that is how we call it. In the States, they call it intelligent manufacturing or smart manufacturing, including IoT, connectivity, and cybersecurity. So this term, Industry 4.0, or Fourth Industrial Revolution, was coined by the German government. They had the mission of transforming manufacturing centers into smart centers, computerized and automatized. It was mentioned for the first time in an industrial trade fair in Hanover in 2011. And that is the vision, a transformation of the manufacturing centers, plants, which are intelligent, which are connected using Internet of Things. So this is the transformation. And we think there are 9 technological pillars that support this idea. Simulation, additive manufacturing, cybersecurity, augmented reality, cloud computing, autonomous robots, and also collaborative robots, which is a third step, and Internet of Things. This is a transformation of factories. Connected factories connecting machines and people. A smart factory based on big data and also the opportunity to select those data to improve competitiveness, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Another concept of future factory is a digital factory. All factories tend to generate a digital factory, a model which represents the physical factory with data from all the machines and people and many indicators. This digital twin can be used with a lot of potential for simulation or drills, for control, and it's kind of very powerful. In the factory, they are also introducing new advanced technologies, such as these pillars of Industry 4.0. Collaborative robots that communicate with each other and they communicate with people too. A critical factor in this context is to have a safe or secure factory as part of this transformation. We can't forget that there is always a security risk and that we need to work on cybersecurity at the same time as we work on the factories of the future. There are 12 new paradigms that support this new industrial revolution, sort of like 12 new technologies which are available to do that digital transformation. In Airbus, we have these enabling technologies, and we haven't reached to the digital twin yet. They have not monitored them, but that is the future. When the colleagues, when our Airbus colleagues from São Pablo and Tablada plants have answered the survey, they talk about digitalization with this factory of the future and the tools that they are receiving now. From these enabling technologies, I would like to talk about augmented reality. Augmented reality in Seville, we have all the blue collars who access the aircraft to do their work order with a tablet in which they have the work order for the day, the drawings, and a lot of information which they used to have on paper or they had to ask their superior. In real time, they can report incidences or problems, and they are in the aircraft with the tablet reporting the incidents, which means the engineering is much faster to solve the problems on site and on time, and the response time is of course shorter. Augmented reality is also we use in the tablets. They can focus on their workspace, and with the camera they see the real space, but they overlap what they have to assemble digitally. So they will see the final finishing, and in some occasions, all they have to do is, to check, and they save they save a lot of time. HoloLens is a pioneer in the Tablada plant. We are starting with it in a new aircraft that will arrive in 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, the workers will be trained, and with the HoloLens, they will see where they have to put the hydraulic and electrical support in the fuselage. And they can see where they are, and they can put it on top with a lot of accuracy. I mean, it's not the structural assemblage, but to support the hydraulic and electrical assemblage is enough. Another paradigm of 4.0 is additive manufacturing. We have these 3D corners with 3D printers, and we started a few years ago, and nowadays they are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, prototyping pieces, tools, and this is a great help because it saves us time manufacturing the final piece. We can do prototyping and we can adapt the computer design. You launch it, you print it, and they add the material, and you can achieve complex design pieces, and they had to be machined. They would have to waste a lot of material. This has been widely accepted by our workshop colleagues. They come up with ideas, with needs to help in their work. They have prototyping to test and connect. So this has been really successful. Digitally, Internet of Things, digital factories are not ready yet. They are underway, but as of reporting and for indicators, they are fully digitalized. And from the workshop to the management, and depending on the reporting level, L2 is the team, L3 is the area, L4 is the program, and then is the plant. So at those levels, the team is organized in front of these digital panels. They have all the indicators in front of them, from absenteeism, failures, and all the measures they take. They do all the meetings in front of the panels, and they report automatically to the next level. And this happens in all the company plants and levels. It was on paper in the past, and we had to put it in green, in red, but now everything is digital. This is a digital platform, and it will be done like that for the new projects. This is a set for design, and the aircraft designers have to check the requirements, and they design, and at the same time we have the manufacturing engineering. It's like a digital set. Everything is simulated, and we can introduce manufacturing procedures in digitally, and also service people come as well. The post-sales, they simulate the maintenance as well with models, with simulation, and everybody brings in their expertise so that they can avoid problems of bringing the drawings, and then they have to manufacture. I mean, there are things that they can't be manufactured because there aren't materials of that size, whatever. So it takes time to develop the design because it involves all stakeholders, but the actual manufacturing and the final result is much faster. And this has a clear repercussion. I mean, all the factories are full of DDMS, and it's all training on DDMS. If I'm going too long, please let me know. So this is just to explain to you the obstacles that this industry has, Industry 4.0, what are the main hurdles? And one of them is finances, because it's all expensive. These are technologies that need to be implemented. This is a total change of the factory. So it's only facilitated by new programs, new investments, and this is a problem. The second obstacle is what we talked about earlier, competitiveness and trainings, for example, for the HoloLens. And we have 2 weeks only to train the operators so that they can be able to use this HoloLens. And another obstacle the Airbus has for this digital development is security. And of course, this is a tool that has a digital development in the cloud. Well, of course, it has to be under cybersecurity conditions. As for the vision the company has, this is triggered from the company level. What is the company vision on digitalization? They had a global workforce forecast at 2029 with a strategy, a company approach, and the workforce in the next 5 years. So this is a honeycomb of strategy. And here, digitalization is one of the most disruptive competencies, and it's a fundamental axis for the company where they want to train their staff there. So they want to develop all levels of the Airbus staff, from the workshop to the management. The trade unions also want to sneak in this training because, of course, from the trade union point of view, this is coming out of the old professional careers. And this is digitalization, because digitalization should also involve trade union representatives. So these are the 9 pillars of the Industry 4.0 that want to develop competencies at various levels. This is the list of training, and according to each level. And for all employees, they have to have basic knowledge of the new digital pillars, and they need to have the basic knowledge of digital tools. For the technology enablers, another step, specific training. And for experts or specialists, so on the left, it has like emerging jobs and competencies, because they've realized that it is necessary to have new job profiles, new developments from programmers, IoTs, and other types of new digital marketing. That is all work that doesn't exist nowadays in the Airbus catalog. We are all cataloged with a specific job code. Those jobs don't exist. So for the new specialists, they have new competencies, and that would be very important. So this is the company's overview. So how do they develop these skills in the workforce? Each year we have development, the career development, and we need to work in our profile to see what competencies are requested from us. Digitalization in these basic competencies, that has to do in all the prototype jobs. And if you don't have them, you need to choose from the catalog those skills that you don't have and you have to develop. And so you need to choose the pathway, the learning path, according to your job type. So once your gaps have been assessed, they discuss with the managers and they determine how your professional career is, how you are going to develop both on training and on the job or participating in a work group. And then they draft an action plan, which is reviewed the year later. I'll go faster. The next start at 12:30 with the Hungarian case, because the digital problems mean that we have a little delayed. Okay, so 5 minutes, so that we tell you how the trade union representation in Airbus is. It's large. In Europe, there are 3 divisions: helicopters, defense and space, and a commercial division. There is a European Works Council, and we need to represent all the 4 main countries in Airbus. And there is a Works Council per division, and they have trade union delegates from all the plants. In Spain, we have the National Works Council. They have, as you know, CGT and UGT. The rest are trade unions which have been generated in the company to meet the gap of the experts and middle management. And of course, we have Works Council in each center, and there is an intercompany committee at the national level. In the last trade union elections, most delegates, they got it in CCOO with, as you can see here, 76 and the UGT 36. Now we have the presidency of Tablada and 7 out of the 10 work centers in Spain. Would like to highlight the trade union delegates of our section belong to the European Works Council or the Defense Division, delegates that are in the follow-up committee for the convention. So with this, I mean that the plants are receiving valuable information on what is happening at the company at all levels. The 5th collective agreement in Airbus was finished at the end of 2019, and there is now an extension because we are currently negotiating the 6th. There is no specific reference to digitalization. It is just the time when it's telework, and but it's an external document. So the platform for the new 6th agreement from CCOO, we think we need to add a specific section on digitalization because of what has been mentioned before. So we need to pay attention to privacy, data protection. There is an ambitious training plan, but the trade union wants to be part of the drafting of the proposals. Study of health and safety. Well, it exists, and we need to know how the workplace is with a collaborative robot, the diseases that can come from using glasses of augmented reality, for example. And of course, the regulation of teleworking in the agreement, but that is currently being negotiated, and this is our proposal. It is true that with the pandemic, this is all subject to protecting the environment. And we hope that the training is under the new agreement. I give the floor to my colleague Carlos. He is the expert in members and trade union representation. Thank you.
Buenos días, buenas tardes. Ahora, siendo la hora que es, saludar a todos los que están presentes.
Good afternoon. I want to say hello to those of you present, to those of you who are following us via streaming. I don't want to take much time because we don't have much time. I'll just give you a very quick summary. To start with, I would like to say that digitalization and our membership, we are trying to increase our membership because due to the current pandemic, everything has had to speed up. The main reason why people would join a trade union is the trust that you can have in your trade union representative and the direct contact you can have with them in the conversations and visits that we have or questions you have with your TU representative. But due to the pandemic, this has had to be accelerated. So we have tried to find other formulas and channels to try and make sure that that trust in those channels is not lost. So even though we have several channels open in social media, Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, we have promoted them much more to try and keep that relationship. Another formula that we have used is digital assemblies. They have been very successful. It can be done in one plant, but it outreaches all the workers of the various plants. So this formula has been very successful. And the questions that normally people are shy to ask questions in public, and to take the floor. But since this is all in a chat, digital chat, well, it's easier for people to ask questions, and then later on you can answer them if you don't want to take that much time within the actual meeting. So that's more useful. Another benefit that we have in digitalization, especially now with the direct and fast way to work, especially with the social media, we can reach other people, and it has the indirect group of workers. It has been difficult for us to go there.
And the main problem we see now in relation to digitalization is the loss of this trust, the trust you have when you have our union delegate closer and to feel part of a group. And once we are teleworking, and due to the digitalization, people do not feel so involved in the union. And this is one of the main problems that we are facing in relation to digitalization and affiliation. Another problem is digital disconnection or digital shutdown. It's very difficult to set a fixed time for doubts and suggestions. It's very important that employees can disconnect so that they can have a work and life balance. In relation to collective bargaining and negotiating with the company, now it's a little bit more difficult because we are not on site in this type of meetings. They are digital, so we lose this closeness, and it's somewhat more difficult when trying to reach an agreement. And as a consequence of all of this, the collective bargaining process takes longer, and in general, in the 6 collective bargaining that we are negotiating right now, we wanted to introduce teleworking from us and from the company's viewpoint on a step-by-step basis, analyzing the potential implementation in the factory. But due to the current situation, we can say that today this is going to be one of the main pillars for the next collective bargaining. We need to accept the situation as it is, and we need to use digitalization for our benefit. Thank you very much. That's all the time I had for my presentation. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Alejandro. Before moving on, I would like to say that the collaboration from the union has been critical, especially from Alexandra and Carlo. We had their availability and collaboration always in the company every time we had to collect the surveys, and also when making the questions. Many of the questions that Carlo has introduced are also present in our report, and it's been, as I said, critical, their collaboration for our results. Thank you again.